Mm. 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 I don't know what to call this yet, but it's a mixture of coconut rum and Gekaken plum wine. Users, if you have a suggestion for the name, I'm more than willing to take it. So a friend and I were having a discussion particular to one of the LARPs around Toronto, and the discussion we were having was on appropriation. For the sake of those involved, I won't name anyone, mention which LARP, or why the discussion led to this, but suffice to say, it did lead to appropriation. He made several good points concerning the taking of cultures of ancient civilizations or characters in game, the focus of the issues being on the yellow facing many people do with old Japanese culture, something we've seen in a lot of Hollywood movies and historically. Now, all things considered, I mean, we had the conversation, we spoke about it at length for quite a while, and I've given our conversation a lot of thought. Now, for the record, he is correct. It is appropriation, but I'm not so sure that it's a bad thing, and don't worry, I will explain. To be fair, his concerns are valid, and Western civilization has had a bad reputation and behaviors concerning the replacing of non-white characters with white actors. However, historically, Western civilization has gone a bit far on many occasions. They're not the only ones to do it. One of the arguments was how, with a few exceptions, Japan wears clothing similar to our own, so in settings much closer to modern, having people wear older Japanese clothing is incredibly stupid. However, that in itself is appropriation back from during the westernization period of Japan. They adopted many clothes and styles from England, France, Germany, and the United States. Every culture borrows from others more and more. We do live in an age where globalization is becoming more and more common. So instead of talking about the issues much more, as many intelligent people have given far better discussions on the subject, I'd like to go over a few bits of advice, not just for the LARPers, but for people in general. And first up is know your genre. At least around Toronto we have three major genres: fantasy, horror, and post-apocalyptic. Fantasy games are usually centered around European medieval fantasies, though seeing much more traditional styled outfits is less surprising. That being said, they are based on European fantasy, and so to see something based on more the Eastern Asian fantasies would be less common. Horror is a bit more difficult. I'm actually not quite sure as how one might approach that in one of those games. I may delve into that in the future, but that's something for another episode. We haven't quite figured that out. Our post-apocalyptic ones are usually based on a more modern world that's gone to hell, and I can definitely see why there would be issues here. Now, I'll be the first one to admit that I love the aesthetic of a lot of traditional Japanese designs. They are considered less practical when you have zombies grabbing at your every limb to hold you down. Many games also employ a rule where if something hits your clothing, then it still counts. So, for these, I definitely recommend that if you're basing stuff off another culture from this time period, do it from the timeline you're working with or as close as you can reasonably manage. To do otherwise, well, you're really ignoring the time period that you're working with, and there are people who do take issues with that. Second is know yourself. What I mean by this is that when you appropriate something, don't just grab whatever you can. Really take a look at what you're borrowing, but also take a look at why you're borrowing it. What's wrong with your own culture or history that you can't borrow from it? What is it about the culture that you want to borrow from it that makes you want to borrow from it? Really try to be in tune with the reasons behind these choices and whether or not they really fit your character. And finally, be sensitive. I know from experience that there are moments when you see something, instantly fall in love with the idea, and charge right in. This, however, does cause other people to become uncomfortable with coming. You want to use kitty gloves as you approach these ideas because we don't want to alienate our fellow players. I hope this helps you with being a little more aware of some of the issues that occur. Again, it's not that I think appropriation is a bad thing. I myself am very eclectic about what things I borrow from different cultures, my own included. But we don't want to turn away people who could potentially be some of our best players through thoughtless action. I'm Robin, this is LARP Ontario, and as we say in Nerdfighteria, don't forget to be awesome.